All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 94 of the Hideout, where we will be discussing Web3 gaming and the Metaverse. I will be one of your hosts, Nick Frontera. For those of you who don't know me, I am one of the co-founders and the CEO of Apollo Entertainment, the company behind Satoshiverse and the Legions 2029 game. I've been in the space since 2017, building away. Before that, I was a lawyer in the entertainment industry, so I've always been fascinated by NFTs and their potential to change the way we think about digital asset ownership. For the last 4 years, we've been building our project Satoshiverse, which started out as a blockchain-themed comic universe and has evolved to have much more of a gaming focus with our Legions 2029 game. I'll go real quick for those of you who don't know. Legion 2029 is a fast-paced hack and slash game, plays very arcadey. It is free to play, and all the information that you need about it can be found in the pinned tweet at the top of the spaces and on our profile. Definitely check it out, though. We have a bunch of cool incentivized campaigns right now, and as I mentioned, it's a free-to-play PC game. So if you are interested in Web3 gaming, really cool opportunity to get involved with our community. We have a lot of fun things going on, so definitely check it out. But without further ado, we are going to do some introductions of our awesome panel today. I'm going to go in the order that I see them, and then we will get the spaces started and go through some questions. So if the speakers, when we call on you, if you could just give a quick introduction to yourselves, what the project's about, what you're building, and most importantly, we love to see the visual content at the top of the spaces. So feel free to pin anything to the top of the spaces that you think would be helpful to the audience and kind of getting to understand what you guys are building. So like I said, I'm going to go in the order I see them. Let's start with Forgotten Playland. Welcome back to the spaces. Great to have you.
Yeah, it's been a while. Thanks so much for having us today. Definitely a lot going on in our corner of the world. So I'm Mikkel. I've been working in Web3 gaming for about 3 years now. Been with Forgotten Playland since about March of this year. We are a free-to-play social party game. We are currently live on Hyperplay Gaming, and we have a big push coming up around our Epic launch in November. We're getting very excited about that. We have kind of dropped some teasers that we may have a play to airdrop-esque campaign coming out here soon. And then we also have Justin here on the stage with us from Grid One Network, and we're doing some things with them too. So we have lots of exciting things coming up. I'm excited to be here for this space with you guys again.
Amazing. Well, definitely great to see you again. And since we mentioned Justin, let's go over to Justin. Welcome to the spaces.
Hey, thanks for having us. I'm Justin Lucas. I'm the Director of Ecosystem and Growth over at Grid Network. Been in gaming for 25 years, and we are building essentially a decentralized discoverability hub to really help games get users actually in them and playing and providing value to gaming studios.
All right. Well, I know that is often a challenge, especially for Web3 games in the space that we continue to all try to grow together. So I'm definitely excited to hear more about how you guys are doing that. And I know that we will dive in very shortly. Last, let's jump into over to our friends at Dogami with Christopher. Nice to have you on.
Hey, thanks for having me. Very cool to be here with surrounded by such great builders. So I'm Chris. I'm CEO and co-founder of Dogami. Dogami is at the crossroads between Pokemon and Paw Patrol, if you'd like. So we're building a family-friendly entertainment franchise that can extend into different types of media. Our core products, in terms of what we've released to date, is our Doga token, which acts as a tool for co-creation and for purchases of sorry, I just saw something crazy outside the window. The Doga token, which allows for co-creation from our community, and also is a utility token for either the NFTs that you can purchase, or for you to be able to purchase memberships for our second product, which is Dogami Academy. It's a free-to-play mobile game, which is available in the App Store and Google Play Store, where basically you're going to be able to interact with your Dogami, which are mystical dogs that were created by celestial beings, which you're going to adopt and raise to compete in obstacle course races versus other members of the community. So yeah, that's us.
Amazing. Well, I love it. And, we've been big fans of what you guys are building since you started. So definitely excited to have you on. Let's jump over to Spencer to give us a quick introduction, some housekeeping points, and then take it away.
Thank you, Nick. What's going on, everyone? My name is Spencer Vogel. I am the Business Development Manager here for Satoshiverse and Apollo Entertainment. Excited to have you guys all on the space today. Just going to go over a few housekeeping items before we actually get into the questions here. So real quick, I just pinned a tweet to the top of the space here that says we're live from the Hideout. We do a giveaway every single week on the Hideout where we give away 5 Satoshi's crystals, which is one of our main in-game resources. Basically allows you to upgrade your characters and all your in-game items. Really, really important resource within the Satoshiverse. So in order to win those 5 Satoshi's crystals, just be here at the end of the space and then also give that post a repost, the one that says we're live that I just pinned to the top. And then moving on to the format of the space. So we're going to start off with group questions. I'm going to call on somebody to start for one of the questions. And then feel free to just jump into the conversation from there. No need to raise your hand or anything like that. Then we're going to move into individual questions for each of you guys. And then if we have time at the end, we'll go back to group questions and then announce our winner. So I think that is it for housekeeping items. So we're going to get going on the first question. And maybe Justin, why don't you start us off for this one? So what do you think are the most exciting potential applications for interoperability between Web3 games and Metaverse experiences?
Ooh, that's a fantastic question. I think the experiences itself is what excites me the most. I think the way that we've always kind of looked at interoperable assets as I take my character from game A into game B into game C, or I take, my rifle from Call of Duty and it goes into Grand Theft Auto. And I think that's maybe a very limited and short-sighted way of looking at it. In some of the ways that we're looking at working with our different studio partners and doing interoperable assets is if you own that asset in game A, then in game B, you are rewarded or given some kind of piece of content that follows a similar theme or a similar feel to it. So maybe your red sword in this action adventure game, maybe it gives you a red car in this racing game. Just, very generically speaking. I think from within a metaverse perspective, I think it affords you a lot of really cool ways to drive user acquisition into those different metaverse experiences across different chains, across different genres, obviously. So I think there's a lot of really cool possibilities that are being worked on now that I think in the very near future are going to be very, very fruitful for game studios and metaverse creators to be able to work together and learn what moves the needle.
If anyone else wants to jump in, feel free to jump in. Otherwise, I can also
Sure,
speak here.
with pleasure. I think this is actually a great question. It's one that for a lot of time, I think a lot of builders kind of struggled with, depending on the assets that you had, what chain you're on. It kind of raised a lot of issues before actually going into development to see how you could either have your assets be interoperable. And I think that with time, the notion of the metaverse and the notion of interoperability has grown a bit. And not to quote Yatsu and be and be a fanboy of Animoca brands, but I think more and more at Dogami, at least, we have the same approach of this interoperability being more about a network effect, and being able to either belong or to participate with a lot of Web3 projects, and being able to bring cross applications or cross play, or bring the idea of having a shared economy. And the way that we're effectively integrating that into our games, and where we're very open to speaking with anybody that's building in the space as well, is, for example, what we're calling technically in-house a scalable event system. And basically what this allows us to do is to create specific tags based on either the provenance of a player, the NFTs that this player has in their wallet, if this person joined from Discord or Twitter from a specific project, and allows us to give them access to exclusive or special events in which they can compete for top prizes based either on our IP, on Dogami, or, for example, if we did something with Satoshiverse, that they would be able to participate and earn NFT cosmetics based on the Satoshiverse, or some utility assets that you may have for the Satoshi universe. So basically what we're trying to do is to cross-pollinate these Web3 audiences, not only to discover other projects, but also to meet new communities. And I think at the core, this is one of the super exciting or interesting sides of what Web3 has to offer. Because at the end of the day, when compared to the Web2 industry, we're still a niche, right? We would like to be more than that, but we don't have the numbers, we don't have the size of the players. But by kind of uniting forces and gamifying the way that we can work together, I think that we can create much more visibility, much more noise, and attract new players to want to jump in. And this, by the way, can also work with Web2 projects. By becoming a funnel of transformation to allow players to come into a platform and discover a large portion of different projects through gameplay, and then figuring out or finding out through the reward system that what assets you have earned allows you to go to another game. So I don't know, I think in itself, interoperability is such a big word, and the way that it can be applied across gaming and across metaverses is, to this point, still kind of undefined and quite limitless. So it's very exciting.
Yeah, I think that, those really, really great points. I've always been I've always thought that interoperability is maybe the biggest word in the space, but maybe from my perspective, one of the more important words in the space when we really start to try to nail down what NFTs are and what they do, and what the value proposition of NFTs are going to be in the future. And so when I got really excited about NFTs when I was working as a lawyer, I got excited because of the potential for NFTs to serve as this like tangibilization layer for digital assets, right? And the main byproduct of that is a standard for interoperability. And so, when we think of well, I guess when we think of NFTs and when we think of interoperability, at least when I do, I kind of look at it through two lenses, right? You have, in my mind, the technical lens, and then you have the legal lens. And I think that it's been such a challenge to accomplish, progress on the technical lens over these past 7 years, that the legal lens has, largely been in the backdrop. And so, I guess to give a more clear example, I think Animoca is actually a really good example of what they're trying to do and how they're trying to drive interoperability forward, right? You have a VC that gets deeply invested and has a portfolio that's full of Web3 projects, they have the influence and the infrastructure to encourage those projects to work together and to form, broader collaborations amongst them. That addresses kind of the legal side, right, of the challenge, because you still need, even with NFTs, you still need an agreement between the projects to support these assets and to really dig deep, because it's not as easy, and that's the technical side. It's not easy enough to just reference the fact that someone owns something and then to pull that object into your game, right? There's different metadata standards. You need different digital objects. Of course, I think to Justin's point, there are really creative ways we can look at the blockchain and see, hey, someone owns something, therefore let's represent something else in our game. And I think that that's technically a bit easier than doing it to actually represent the asset itself, obviously, because there's tons of technical challenges there, and I think it's very hard. But what the blockchain does, I guess backing up for a second, from a legal perspective, you could do that without the blockchain, right? You could say, hey, here's two projects that want to collaborate. We're going to sign a contract, and, we're going to put some of your stuff in our game, and you're going to put some of your stuff in their game, and here we have a partnership. Games do it all the time. You see IPs in Fortnite and Roblox, you see crossover. It's really cool and it's great, but it's been in the Web2 space for a long time. I think what the blockchain does, at least it's starting to do, is it gives you this layer of, I don't actually need to reference your internal library or some API that you set up to see if that person owns it, because that's what the blockchain does. It's this decentralized layer of ownership that we can verify, ownership of the asset. And then you can bring it back and say, hey, now I have the ability to verify that you own the asset. But that's like 33% of the equation, I feel like. Because if we wanted to do it truly, interoperable and decentralized, you would need all the metadata in order to represent that thing in your game to be contained and accessible through the NFT. That doesn't currently exist in most formats. We can't actually pull, the 3D assets from IPFS or whatever database they're stored on. That's a challenge. So I think that's a technical challenge that a lot of projects are working to solve. I think that there's challenges with the game engines that different games are being built on, the formats, the polygon requirements. So let's just say that there's a lot of technical challenges that we need to get over, and solve before we'll have true interoperability, at least the way that we've conceived it. And at least the way we've talked about maybe actually being able to take one asset into another. But I also agree that there's awesome examples of using an asset in one way in one environment and then using it in a different way in another environment. And I think that's going to be the path forward in the short term for sure. I do think, however, that the more exciting use of NFTs is this legal future that we could create, right? And I think that's the thing I would focus on, is that they're at least, and what NFTs do is they create an infrastructure through which you can apply many of the same principles that we currently legally apply to physical assets, and take those and apply them to digital assets. And we could do an entire space on why that's the case and why that might be one of the most understated things that we won't really talk about in the space. But what that means is that we can take, decades of legal precedent and regulations and, all the different things that actually allow businesses to work with each other at a big scale, and craft those in a way that projects can actually tap into that. So the example I always give is, if I buy a t-shirt and I buy a t-shirt and it has a Superman logo, I can take that t-shirt anywhere. I could walk into pretty much anywhere. I could even walk into, a Marvel Comics shop, and no one's going to be able to tell me I can't wear my, DC Comics Superman t-shirt, right? I have that because I have a series of rights that have been developed over decades that pertain to that t-shirt. I can resell that t-shirt anywhere. I can advertise that logo. I can call it a Superman t-shirt. Those rights exist because of decades worth of law that have been applied to those rights. Those rights do not exist for digital assets. They have never existed, and there's, a lot of those rights don't exist, and they don't necessarily exist yet for NFTs. And I think that this is something that we take for granted and say, of course I can take it here. All we got to do is solve the technical, issues. But that's not necessarily true. I mean, I think we have a long ways to go before, DC itself sells a Superman avatar. And then because it's an NFT, it could be used in XYZ metaverse, XYZ game, yada, 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 yada. And I think we're going to get there. And I think that's the thing that I'm most excited about from an interoperability perspective, because you can imagine then how we can really lean into this idea of identity, right? This idea of uniqueness in ownership, the ability to use a unique asset anywhere you want, just like we express identity in the physical world. As the world becomes more digital, I think that's where, we really start to connect the dots on interoperability. But I'm excited. I mean, we've been doing a lot of stuff ourselves, kind of testing the limits. We did the first wearables, the linked wearables collection in Decentraland. That was cool because it was taking our Legionnaires and representing them, like Justin was saying, as a different asset in a different metaverse. We've done cool partnerships where, it's even if it's just throwing a logo for a community on a creative avatar, like we did with Dogami and, some of our partners in the past. I think that's even at a surface level, a layer of interoperability that really does bring communities together. So sorry, that was a long rant and I went down kind of a legal rabbit hole, but I think that this theme is one that ultimately, as NFTs become more of a back-end thing, and as we, stop talking about PFP collections and cryptocurrencies and, we start to really focus on what are the use cases, I think interoperability in its true form is really going to start to shine as the use case that makes NFTs useful on a macro scale to like the business of digital products, which I think is, only going to grow exponentially in the next 5 years.
I don't want to go on another legal rant with you, but you've touched on to $1 billion industry of licensing and royalties, and I do think that you're 100% right. Go to the Brand Licensing Expo in Las Vegas and see the years and years of work that's been done previously in establishing, brand consistency and coherence. And there is a level of control on their application, their distribution, because it is what has successfully made these brands so famous. And we see a lot of this when we work with Web2 projects. So we did a project with the pet care and pet health brand Purina, and that was a year just to sign the deal. And it's going to take 1.5 to 2 years to see it through completely. We started off with a co-creation of Purina Doga Snacks, which is a virtual pet food brand. And now we're trying to bridge that into reality in 2025. But the complexities and the rights and royalties and licensing agreements that come with these types of deals are extremely complex. And I think we're only touching the surface now of that in Web3. And we can already see projects like Doodles or others. Some retain the rights to the IP and the way that they're used, others distribute it. So clearly this is all something that's going to be defined through time. But it's such a huge topic and such an interesting one at that. And we can see that you're from the entertainment space, definitely.
Yeah, I'll double down on what Christopher said. Before getting into Web3, I was the head of publishing at Mattel and working on Barbie and Hot Wheels and learning quickly the difference between trademark and trade dress and hunting down in the app stores every single week and trying to set, cease and desist letters or takedown notices for people that were basically stealing the IP and trying to monetize it. I think Web3 provides a layer of functionality that I think can help address it in some very cool and interesting ways that actually removes a lot of the heavy lifting that falls either on a game studio that owns an IP, a legal department that is responsible for IP, copyright, trademark violation, and trying to, get stuff taken down. So I think I don't want to say Web3 solves that because it's so cliche, but I think there's some very cool things that could be done with that, just from an interoperability standpoint of different IPs across a multitude of different genres.
Awesome. Well, if there's nothing else to add on this conversation, I'm going to move us along to individual questions, but that was an awesome, awesome discussion. So first individual question is going to be to Chris. So Dogami recently released a new update last month that included the introduction of 2 new currencies into its game economy, bringing the total, I believe, up to 5. So how do you think the use of multiple currencies can enhance the gaming experience for players compared to using just one?
There's a few things actually. So obviously there's a business perspective and there's a user's perspective in everything that's being built. We have to think about both value distribution and value creation. And it was essential for us to be able to integrate more than one currency already on the side that we're distributing a token. And there are limitations to being able to distribute tokens fully legally in a game. So one of the currencies that we created is currency that can be traded 1-to-1 with our token. So there's what we call a game token, and then there's the ecosystem token, which is the Doga. What that allows users to do is from the rewards that they're getting in game, they can spend those tokens directly on premium goods. So having multiple layers of currencies in a game basically allows for both a mixture of free and premium currencies. It also gives you a sense of progression. So the more difficult the levels or the more difficult the tasks, the higher the type of currency that you're distributing. So at the moment, it's actually, unless I'm going crazy, it's actually 4 currencies and not 5. So we have a regular soft currency, which is kind of the low-hanging fruit, the easy task that you get, and that soft currency allows you to participate in, let's say, more farming features to get bigger currencies or to get consumables, but also to participate in events. Then you have your hard currency, which traditionally, if you're a Web2 user, this is the type of currency that you purchase through in-app purchases. And this can give you access to more premium content. And then above that lies the game token, which is the direct reward that you're getting on, let's say, the Web3 side as a Web3 player, participating in multiplayer events, which you can either decide to extract outside of the game and onto the marketplace for your tokens to be exchanged against USDT or other currencies, or that you can use directly in the game itself to either buy very premium cosmetics or to exchange against hard currencies. So all in all, it's to give a deeper experience, to help on a business side to integrate features that are retention and monetization based, but at the same time give this sense of progression and some incentives to the players to want to try and go through harder tasks. I don't know if that answered the question. It was
it
very
definitely.
theoretical.
Definitely did. It's impressive that you can keep track of all those. I feel like I don't know, as a user. So actually, that may be a little bit of a follow-up question. So I guess because it is a little bit of a kind of confusing potentially to understand the different currencies. What are you guys doing, or how do you think companies in general should kind of try to educate or try to help people understand how all the different currencies work?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think already traditionally, if you look at Web2 games, it's not unusual to have coins, gems, and potentially something else. So we're used to, in a traditional gaming environment, having at least two currencies, with, let's say, more strategy-based games, a third currency in there as well. At the end of the day, these currencies are used as resources for you to be able to unlock different parts of either the meta or the core gameplay loop. What we wanted to do was basically to be able to widen up the experience to our users, because once we added all the meta features around the core gameplay loop, we needed to be able to reward our players with more than just one thing, and to give them that added layer of depth to the gameplay. So in itself, in the mobile game, you only have these three currencies, which is the soft, hard, and the token. And the fourth one is more of a marketplace, and that's our ecosystem token, which you don't see visible in the app itself. So if you're a Web2 user, you're confined to two currencies, and as a Web3 user, you will see the extra game token in there, which you can use freely in the app as well. That allows you to not have to come out of the gaming experience and to go claim your tokens elsewhere for you to be able to use them, but to use them directly in app without having some constraints from either our friends at Apple or Google.
Yeah, I think it's interesting, right? Because I think that the meta in the space, in the Web3 space, early on at least, was kind of this single currency meta, because it's hard enough to manage the tokenomics on a single token. And then I think over the last 2 years, we've seen people start to, as we move away from kind of, let's introduce a speculative currency and drive value through exchange listings, and let's actually think about how tokens are used within a game economy or game, ecosystem in order to create value for the players. I think it starts to open up a lot of, at least, potential mind space for very different uses of tokens. And so one of the ones I've always thought was interesting is DeFi Kingdoms, who has literally an ERC20 token for all of their resources, and they do that so that they can drive, liquidity pools for their game, which is really cool. We ourselves have been looking at different implementations of, mixing ERC20s with 1155s and trying to figure out how to enhance game economies through the use of not just non-fungible tokens, but fungible tokens, right? And I think that one of the challenges with that is kind of this traditional view of, open marketplace liquidity, the ability to exit, right? And I think that when people think token, they think, oh, well, when am I going to go and be able to list this on an exchange? What are you guys doing to market this? And I think that takes on a whole life of its own that may not be healthy for games. And so I definitely commend games and game ecosystems that are thinking about tokens a little bit differently and are trying to think more like, how does this add value to the ecosystem? What is the layer here that, that makes this work? And I do think that ultimately it is, if you do have like an ecosystem token that's listed and on decentralized exchanges, there is an expectation that will be the token that kind of drives the value for the holders and the value within the community. So I do think that it all has to be interconnected in a very particular way that continues to, justify people holding that token. I think that's just the space we're in. But ultimately, I don't see any reason why, multiple tokens can't be used throughout a project in different ways to add value. I mean, ultimately, if you look at an ERC 1155, they're basically fungible tokens with pictures, right? And, that technically somewhat different. And, I know that there's different things you can do with them. But at the end of the day, people don't have any problem with lots of ERC 1155s in a game. And sometimes it makes more sense just to use an ERC20 because they're more flexible, within the blockchain. And so I like how you guys are using it. I think that honestly is going to be the future as we see more hybridization with games and games trying to integrate Web3 but doing it in a way that doesn't break their system, especially like you said with Apple and Google Store on the mobile games. There's necessary reasons you have to do things creatively just to have a Web3 game on those sorts of stores. So definitely appreciate the insight there.
And if I can just add one quick little thing, I think there's also a question of positioning for us that's very important. Is we would like to think at least that we can create mass adoption and bring Web2 players into the Web3 sphere. So we need to be able to balance and create a reward mechanism without the incentivization of tokens behind for players to want to stay in an environment. And once they get through a certain threshold and they start earning their first NFTs, hopefully, then they can get access to, let's say, the larger economy that sits behind it. But we need to have these foundations in place for us to be able to be attractive to Web2 players as well. So just want to add that real quick.
Power dropped off there. I don't know what happened. My volume just completely cut out. Twitter or X just doing its thing. But we're back. All right. So next question for Forgotten Playland. So you guys recently introduced a new player progression system. So in the context of Web3 games, why do you think player progression systems are important, and what unique benefits do you think they offer compared to Web2 progression systems?
That's a good question. Yeah, so I'd say, progression systems have always been, pretty important aspects in gaming to help you measure, right? We're all trying to see how far we've come. We want some feeling of permanence from the work we put in for things, hold on, my son's coming in 1 second. I got to avoid him. We're focused on adding as many retention elements as we can as we launch on Epic Games. So that was a really big focus for us. We have arcade, a few other things coming along with that as well. Tournament modes, etc. But with the player progression, we're a multiplayer session-based game. There's going to be a lot of disconnect between players and communities. We need that leaderboard. We need those achievements for people playing X number of hours or whatever, so that people can flex. And I think the level of, the value that Web3 adds to that is that you actually own these achievements, and that these achievements can, like we were talking about a little bit before with the interoperability, move with you from game to game. So if I have an achievement in one game for playing 10,000 hours of Forgotten Playland and I want to go over and play the Dogami game, and they say, we have a collab, and anybody who comes in who's met this achievement or who has this achievement gets X reward for coming to play. It just opens up all those possibilities for collabs and interoperability and all that good stuff. So sorry, I know my answer is a little disjointed. I've been running away from my youngest son in the house we're all home from the hurricane right now.
No worries at all. Thanks for the response, and good luck. Good luck with the hurricane. I know things are kind of crazy down there right now. So last individual question is going to go to Justin. So Grid Network just launched the first Web3 gaming digital product listed on Amazon, which was super exciting. So if you could tell us maybe a little more about that, and then also how do you think activations like this in general can help grow the Web3 gaming ecosystem?
Sure. Yeah, we're super excited. We have been working on this for almost 3 years now with Amazon and getting listed. There's a lot of stories I could tell along the way, as anyone that's ever worked with any massive conglomerate could tell you. But I think, I think it's a great way to get the visibility. I think it's a great way for us to reach scale across Web3. And it's a great way for us to kick off some more exciting partnerships that we have coming over the next month that I think are just as big and just as impactful to let people know that there's some great Web3 games in this space. There are some, great games that are hopefully going to change the narrative and change Web2 gamers' minds and get them to understand that games are just games. And how we work with each of our different studios in providing an incentive layer to help them actually get gamers into the game, which goes kind of to your previous question to Mikkel. Studios need a statistically significant data set of users to even have accurate KPIs, whether it's, DAU, MAU, D1, D7, D30, D365. Those KPIs are super important, but it's also understanding how people are playing your game, having a heat map of where people are dying, or, your map designer, your level designer has built out this wonderful, beautiful map, but if everyone's dying in the corner and not in the building that he spent 3 weeks creating, like that's, the people aren't seeing the entirety of the map. So I think there's a lot of really cool things that this partnership entails. And it's really just kind of the start of a process of being where Web 2 is, and getting them excited about the possibilities of player agency with the assets, and showing them that there's great games in the space.
Beautiful. Thank you. Well, it's very, very exciting that you guys got that listing, and yeah, excited to see where everything else goes with that. So I think we have time for one more question here. And why don't we have Chris start us off with this one? So, in what ways can Web3 gaming be used as a tool for social change and awareness?
Uh, there's a few ways, and I'm trying to be wary of time and be concise, so that everybody gets a chance to speak. But we had this great opportunity not too long ago. I think it was about a month or two ago. We threw an event called Play for Good. And we did that in partnership with Purina. Obviously, we're a very big dog loving entity, knowing that our main characters are these mystical dogs. And what that allowed us to do was for I think it was a week or 2 weeks. I think, yeah, either for a week or 2 weeks. I can't remember exactly, but we signed up with an agency that with how'd you call it? We signed up with a Jesus Christ, I've lost my words. We worked with this this company. Basically takes care of dogs that have been abandoned, and it has a specific name, and I've lost it. And what effectively we did is we created milestones that the community could check at any moment. And the more kilometers you did, the more meals we would serve for all these dogs. And we saw incredible engagement for the entire course of the event, and we were able then to redistribute some funds that was also supported. So whatever we gave in money, Purina gave the same amount, but in pet food for these dogs that don't have any food. So, kind of long story short, there's definitely ways in which we can have real social impact, and find ways to gamify good actions and to create visibility for things that some people might not be looking at. And I think also on the other side of the spectrum, there's this huge opportunity for linking up like-minded individuals in a fast and efficient way, just based on being able to share their passions. We've got one of the channels on Discord, which is on the ability to be able to share your pet with others, pictures of your dogs, and discuss what type of what type of tricks that you've been teaching them, or what are the good foods to give and things like that. So there are many different ways. I think it depends on your positioning and where you can have the most impact. But basically, being able to, either through gamification or through the communication channels, being able to push positive messages is one great way that we can have some sense of social impact.
Gaming has always kind of taken I've always been in gaming, so that's kind of always been my frame of reference. But gaming has always kind of taken the lead in having a socially aware, I don't want to say agenda, but programs available to them. I know a game I worked on for the Sega Saturn that was based on World War II. We gave money to the Holocaust Museum. From revenue from the games. You look at games like Jupiter and Mars, which was for the PlayStation VR. Fantastic game, by the way. Go play it. It's phenomenal. But it's based on what would happen if the entire world flooded, essentially. And you play as two different dolphins, Jupiter and Mars. It's very, very wonderfully done. It's a great game. Twitch does a lot with like the Wounded Warrior Project, and different events around giving back. Who else does stuff like this? There's quite a bit of it that goes on in gaming, and I think there's ways that you can do it. Like Christopher mentioned, we're partnering with a specific program to give to a specific charity. There's ways of using the existing timeline of events to build a game around something that causes social awareness, like Jupiter and Mars does, or a way of sharing profits from a game that you release with a specific charity to help further social awareness.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and hop in. One thing that I've really noticed with, especially Web3 gaming communities is our willingness to move into and help like developing countries build out the infrastructure, put on events and do things that are bringing, earning opportunities through crypto gaming to some of these more developing countries. And, particularly I'm thinking we have an event coming up with a group in Nigeria that is putting on an AVAX gaming summit there, right? Not a huge deal, but we're sponsoring it. There's going to be about 100 people there. They're going to come learn about the opportunities to work and build in crypto gaming and start building those core communities that will provide access to the next 100 and 200 and 300 and 400 people that are having access to this market. And I think just generally, right, like community building online gives us so much more ability to reach new eyes, new audience members, and places for your community to collab. So if you're so inclined to a particular cause, you can spring up a community around it so easily and find like-minded individuals to brainstorm with, to put together different, activations or charity drives or collabs. Like it's just limitless. And I think crypto, there's, different companies that have focused on crypto donations, right? Like siphoning off like a couple fractions of a cent from gas transactions and putting that money towards good causes. There's just the infrastructure allows for so much. And I think gaming really is kind of at the forefront of bringing opportunity to new audiences.
Yeah, I think, everybody kind of made the same points that I want to make. I think everything was very well put. So I won't add much, but I think, yeah, we look at kind of the same ways that we can create sustainable business models in Web3. I think we can extend those to do good, right? And whether that's incentivization, whether that is bringing communities together, whether that is fundraising, through crypto. We've seen an incredible amount of that. I'm excited for some of the experimentation that we've done over the last several years as a community to take that and to apply that to a better cause and to more sustainable causes, as we think of maybe a lot of the money in the last couple of years being kind of siphoned into not so sustainable or not so good causes. I think there's so much potential for this kind of technology that has demonstrated its ability to bring the world together and to bring people from around the world and unify them over a particular IP or a particular cause, and really, really make passionate community members out of nothing, right? Out of a cute picture or a cute GLB file or some little app that they're playing with on their phone to give these people a sense of belonging and feeling that this is a place I want to be every day and spend my time interacting. I think the potential to use that for good is incredible. And we go to all these conferences, and I've seen so many examples of people trying to use Web3 for good, and a lot of times really doing great things with Web3. And it's just, as we, at the end of the day, a lot of this stuff depends on money, right? And we've seen Web3 be used countless times to generate money, and I think that we will continue to see that. And I think that could also be a very interesting way for bigger brands to get involved in the space. There's always a certain de-risking that comes with a charitable aspect to anything that you're doing. So I think that you could definitely see charitable applications of IPs and social good uses of crypto to kind of introduce a fan base to IP. In fact, a lot of the projects, the bigger IPs we worked with when the art NFTs were booming, wanted to include a charitable component. I think more altruistically, but also to make sure that the messaging of a established company trying something new and exciting, but that could have problems. The charitable component to it was definitely something that made it more appealing, I think, to more established brands, especially when it's a smaller number that may not move the needle, from a profit standpoint for bigger brands. I think when you start to think about the goodwill that could come out of something like this, it becomes a lot more interesting. So I guess that's more of a business cap wearing, but I think that there's a potential to use it for good, but to also grow the space through that.
Beautiful. Well, I think with that, we will close out our discussion, and I think it is time to choose the winner of our giveaway before I throw it back to Nick to close us out. And the winner this week of 5 Satoshi's Crystals is OWD, Old White Dragon. Congratulations. I know I don't need to give you instructions on how to sign up and play the game, but just send us a DM with your username to the Satoshiverse account, and we'll drop those into your account. And I guess for anybody else who wants to try the game for the first time, go to game.legions2029.com and sign up with a free account. Nick, I will throw it back to you to close this out.
All right. Well, thank you all so much, as always, for joining and giving us another exciting panel. Thank you for the speakers for taking their time. And this was a great discussion. I really enjoyed all of your insights. Really, things that we need to continue thinking about, talking about, and building around. So I'm just fortunate that I get to do this every week with you guys, and fortunate to have your insights on board. Thanks to everyone who joined live. It was great to have you, and I saw a lot of people popping in and out, and I know people will watch the recorded version, so thank you for joining. And yeah, we'll be here next week. So if you enjoyed the content, give everybody a follow. Definitely check out what they're doing, especially the Hideout account. We have a bunch of content throughout the week that we put out about the speakers, about what's coming up next. So check it out. And yeah, we will see you next week. If anyone of the speakers would like to give a quick plug or remind anyone of how to get into their project, please feel free to use this time now to let people know. And then what we'll do is, once everyone's finished with their goodbyes, we will wrap things up, and the space, there'll be a slight delay just because there's a delay between us speaking and the audience hearing it, but we'll wrap it up now. So everyone feel free.
I'll just say thank you so much for having us and giving us some visibility and an opportunity to speak with everyone here. And definitely want to connect with everybody taking place on this panel. Super interesting what's being built and what's happening, and thoroughly enjoyed it. So thank you so much for having us. If you want to jump on free to play on Dogami Academy, it's on the Apple Store and Google Play Store. So go have some fun.
Yep.
Thanks again.
And I'll jump in as well. If you're interested in what we're building and driving user acquisition into some great games in Web3, go to grid, that's gr1d.gg. And we've also got a SocialFi program. We're working with all of our different game studios to help them drive awareness, and that's arena.grid.gr1d.gg. Look forward to seeing everyone out playing games.
All right. Thank you all so much. We'll wrap up now.